Greetings. Here are 10 more of the rules of burden from the short novel The Carriers. The 11th rule of burden. A man has no brothers, but solidarity with the unity of all. So this rule, there are plenty of rules in these rules of burden. Again, they repeat themselves, but in a different way, mostly in regard to the context that the rules are placed. And it's the idea that the individual is to be mitigated and reduced as much as possible. The understanding that the individual will naturally flourish no matter what, no matter the circumstances, no matter the hardships. From a group of people, the individual will always come out, regardless of conformity and the herd mentality. The individual will eventually come out. And the objective with many of these rules of burden is to reduce the prevalence of the individual appearing out of the group, and to provide enough consequences to the individual for allowing themselves to come forth out of the group. And it seems to be a contradiction, because a man has no brothers but solidarity with the unity of all. So they're all brothers, but the concept of brotherhood is banished, because it's solidarity among men, among brothers, among people of a like mind. And this is the notion of small groups of people, small groups within a larger group that isolate themselves. This creates conflict in the general society. And again, this is one of the things that the authorities want to reduce, is this notion of conflict. The 12th rule of burden. It matters not from where you come upon the world, but that you are useful. This is another instance of repetitive rules. Utility. There is a heavy utilitarianism in the community. If you don't have a purpose, then you're not much use to the community. The 13th rule of burden. None shall possess what no other can possess. The 14th rule of burden. Language is a necessary evil, for if a word is not used more than once a day in every daily activity, it is then banished from existence and never uttered again. The 15th rule of burden. There is no more profane utterance than the word brotherhood. Brotherhood implies allegiance among men, where the only allegiance a man may have is to the rules of burden and the state of being, that is, those who govern his body and soul. That's another rule of burden that implies that there is no allegiance among men specifically, but of mankind as a whole, to the rules of burden and to the authorities. The 16th rule of burden. He who possesses something is himself possessed. I remember hearing this quite a lot growing up. Whatever you own owns you. It's a reactionary statement about materialism. But if you take another notion of this idea of what you own owns you, think of some of the things you own as mile markers of your progress through life. You know, there's your first car, your first whatever it is that you hold dear, that first thing, that first novel that you read that you really liked, or that first movie that you saw, you know, that perfect day where everything was just clicking just right, and that movie, it just wasn't the movie that you watched, or the book that you read, or the song that you heard, or the CD that you bought, or the car that you bought, your first house that you bought. There's a stage in your life that that object indicates, that it's something of a mile marker, an example of a moment in time. So yeah, materialism is a problem. People buy too much garbage, not understanding that what they're buying is garbage. But to some extent, some of the things that you have around yourself, you know, they're evidence of a point in your life. The 17th rule of burden. The rot of a man's body is in direct proportion to the evil his death takes from the world. The world is purified through the stench of corpses. It's a morbid rule, but there is the other instance that there's a general consensus among the authorities, at least in this story. Not so much among the general rabble in the catacombs, but of the authorities, that the one sickness in the world is the existence of man. And it seems kind of an issue. If you think that the existence of mankind is evil in the world, but you can't remove yourself from the world, therein lies a contradiction. But is it a contradiction? So one of the things about contradictions, they're like contradictions are an artifice. I would conclude that they don't exist naturally. If it appears that a contradiction appears naturally, then there's something that's not being seen. So if you take the members of authority and they conclude overall that the existence of mankind is poison to the world, but they themselves don't remove themselves from the world, then who are they projecting that concept that mankind is a poison on the world, but upon the people that they are in control of? So you have the general rabble existing in the catacombs, and then you have the members of authority. And while the members of authority consider that mankind is a poison upon the world, they would conclude themselves to be a lesser poison than anyone below their stature. The 18th rule of burden. If there was a path followed by one, certainly it was even better a path followed by all. Consensus and conformity is enforced throughout the catacombs, as indicated by this one rule, the 18th rule of burden. The 19th rule of burden. The schedule put forth upon a man, whether upon him by the authority of his betters, or in servitude to the sun, passing from east to west, is of equal value to the greatest of rules of burden, prudence of punctuality. A man must do as he is told, when he is told. The 20th rule of burden. From the dirt they come forth, and to the dirt they shall return. So while I'm recording these rules of burden, I am working on the final draft of The Carriers. This list is roughly a little over 100 rules of burden, give or take. Not all of these rules of burden are going to be in the actual draft of the novel, though the list of rules of burden will be placed at the end of the novel. In the meantime, I am working on finishing up another short novel that is part of a series of stories culminating roughly around the Southwest. But in the meantime, these are the second set of 10 rules of burden, 11 through 20. Thank you for watching.